Well, hello and welcome to another monologue conversation. Today I'm speaking with Marty Frank, who's a Monalog Collective member. He's also a practicing physician and, well, most importantly, he's a photographer. So Marty, spring is here, and how's it in Jersey?
Beautiful. Today was a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I'm just sort of hoping this isn't a teaser and we're not going to get snow again in 2 days.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I hope not. Well, welcome and thanks for joining me today. And so I wanted to start by talking about something that I think you and I have in common, and that is you've said that you first really got interested in photography about 20 years ago because of I guess seeing an exhibition of John Sexton's work, and it's interesting because when I was much younger, I took several workshops with John.
Really?
Yeah, in the Carmel area, and we've stayed in touch. We've stayed in touch, ever since all those years. But I wanted to ask you. So, what was it about Sexton's work that sort of spoke to you, and how and what kind of an influence has it had, in terms of the work that you do?
Well, I was actually in a children's museum in New Jersey with my kids who were running around and screaming. And in the background, in a particular area, there were these really ethereal black and white landscape pictures,
Mm-hmm.
which were so different than the rest of the environment in this children's museum that I was really struck by it. And the images were so beautiful. They were of, landscape images of the West, and they really were so gorgeous. I read a little, I went home, read a little bit about him and his process and his technique, and I wanted to try and use, a view camera
Yeah.
because I thought there was something, the work was the clarity, the technical aspects of the images were perfect, and the vision was so beautiful and ethereal that I was inspired. There have been a few times in my life where I've been fortunate in seeing photography that has inspired me and that has changed me, and I think that was the first time that occurred.
Really?
Yeah,
So up until that point, you were like a lot of people. You took snapshots of your
right,
kids, your family,
right,
but you
exactly,
didn't really, you
exactly.
didn't. Yeah.
I had a little, like, I lived in New York City and we lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and I had a tiny little enlarger that I would set up, in a bathtub.
Yeah.
And, every now and then I would take some pictures, and it was fun, but it was never anything other than that to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sort of got you going.
Right.
Well, um,
And
well,
there've been a
well,
few
you
other times where I've seen images that really, inspired me and made me change the way I think about
really.
health and photography. Yeah.
What are some examples of those?
Well, I think the biggest example, I used to really enjoy, and I still really enjoy, silver gelatin printing from large format images, and
Yeah.
I love the work of Minor White,
Right.
and there were a few of his images that I thought were breathtaking. But there was a time once I was actually in the Metropolitan Museum, and they had an exhibit of Steichen,
Yeah.
and there was this a gum over platinum image called The Little Round Mirror,
Mm-hmm.
a nude where you see the posterior of a woman holding a mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
it's with gum over platinum, so it's the texture is very unusual,
Mm-hmm.
and the image just moved me so much that I wanted to learn about alternative process photography.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, we'll come. Yeah, we're going to come back to that. But you mentioned Minor White, and one of the most beautiful exhibits I think I've ever seen was, and I'm now I'm trying to remember. I've seen so many. I think this was at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And it wasn't a very large exhibit, but it was a number of photographs, contact prints, 4x5 contact prints that he had made of portraits of people in national parks. And they were, they were like exquisite little, gems. They were 4x5, but they were contact. They were just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that show. Well, I really do love your photographs, and the subject matter that you have or that you focus on seems pretty varied. What are you looking for when you're making your photographs, and what are you seeking to create?
I guess, patterns, textures, contrasts between, things that are sharp and things that are dull, things that are round, things that are straight. Those things kind of excite me. Um, patterns, I guess, concepts that I see in something that I could turn into a photograph.
Well, but you do a lot of nude work as well,
I mean, I some of my favorite work, some of the stuff that I'm the proudest of has been some figure studies, yes.
hmm And do you view that along the lines of patterns and shapes and things that just
Yeah, well,
happen to be?
the things that I really, I'm proud of with my figure studies are the contrast between the fine lines of you know, the body that I'm imaging and the background, which is a factory,
Right.
and I find that contrast really interesting. The soft tones of the skin and the harsh light of the factory, of the environment, which is industrial. That struck me as very interesting in the couple of times that I've had the opportunity of working with a model.
Yeah, I was sort of struck by the same thing. So that was when I saw those photographs. So that was sort of a deliberate. That was a
Yeah,
That's what you were trying to show,
yeah,
that sort of that dichotomy.
right.
Yeah, and now were those now you live in New Jersey, but you've spent a lot of time obviously in New York City. Those photographs are made near where you live in New Jersey?
They're made in Patterson. I've made a number of, I've done some work in Patterson. Patterson is
Mhm.
really close to me, and it's a very interesting place.
Yeah.
And there's a building in Patterson uh, called the Art Factory.
Uh-huh.
It was actually a factory that manufactured rope in the 1830s and the 1820s.
Hmm.
It's right in Patterson Falls, so they use the turbine from the water power used to generate the rope making. But
Really?
now the building is sort of partially restored, partially not restored. And the guy there, was he was very nice to me, and he let me work there for free.
hmm
So I was able to do that. And it was very interesting. And I hired a model. I had never done that before. I'd never worked with a model before. So
hmm
it was very interesting to me. Actually, once I took a picture of a statue of a nude, and it was in an artist's studio. My wife was taking some art lessons there, and I
hmm
had my camera on, and I thought there was this kind of really interesting, mannequin. So I took a picture of it and I gave it to the artist. And one of his models got in touch with me and asked me to take pictures of her. And that was the first time I ever worked with a model.
mm Hmm. Hmm. So is this something that you think you're going to continue
Yeah, for
on?
sure. It's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
like to continue it. Yeah. I haven't done it for a couple of years. And of course, with the pandemic, I haven't done, very much except for taking pictures of sewing machines.
Yeah, well, I want to get back to that as well. So you make most of your photographs with large format cameras, right?
Correct.
And so I'd like to, and you also use, well, you mentioned silver gelatin prints. You make silver gelatin prints, but you also do alternative processes. You mentioned that.
Right.
So maybe we could talk a little bit more about your work. The kinds of, the sizes of negatives you produce, the materials you use, the methods that you use,
Sure.
because it's pretty varied, and it's very interesting. So maybe we could talk about that.
Sure. Well, I don't use digital negatives.
Right,
I don't have a digital camera. I don't use anything with digital imaging.
right.
Love using film. I love using, a view camera. So I have a 4x5 view camera, and that's the one I usually use for, enlarging. But I actually been recently making 4x5 contact prints, and they're pretty cool also,
Yeah.
with alternative processes. And then I have an 8x10 camera, which is probably my favorite tool to use. Again, the 8x10 contact print alternative process print is very traditional, very classic. And I recently got a 7x17 camera that I've been sort of learning how to use a
Oh,
little bit.
wow.
Yeah, I had it restored by someone, and I have a couple of images out of it that are really cool that I'm proud of.
Now, who made the 7x17?
It's made by Corona.
Oh, it's an old Corona, and you had
It's made
somebody.
like in the 20s.
Okay, right, and so you had somebody restore it.
Right. And it's pretty cool. It's fairly lightweight.
Yeah,
It's a little bit rickety. It doesn't have a lot of the, modern movements, especially
right.
the front standard, but the rear standard is geared, so it's pretty, and also it's really lightweight. You can carry it, which
Yeah,
a lot of, ultra large format cameras can't.
right. So so now when you use 8x10, you're contact printing, correct?
Yeah.
So how do you decide, you've got those three different formats, and you have the choice of enlargement versus contact printing. How do you so what's your thought process, and what do you think about in terms of when you say, okay, I'm gonna make these kinds of pictures today? Well, how do you determine which sort of
Usually I
format you're
know,
going to use?
like I know when I take out the camera that I'm going to make a contact, print with platinum and palladium, or that I'm going to use it to make to enlarge the negative with silver gelatin. I just, that in my head, I have this idea about what the picture will look like.
So you know ahead of time, and you've thought it through, and
Yeah, yeah,
and that sort of
almost
thing.
always.
So do you normally just bring one camera with you then?
Yeah, one's a lot.
Yeah, one's a lot. That is a lot. So now,
I recently had back surgery, so I asked my surgeon, is it okay for me to like carry 45 pounds in my backpack to take photographs? And it's excellent for you. It's really good for you. As long as it's in a backpack, it counters the tension of the spine. So it's really good. Keep on doing it. So it's medically approved.
good. That's good to know. Now, so
Yeah.
you've mentioned silver gelatin. You've mentioned uh, uh, um, alternative processes. Tell us, let's talk a little bit about, what are the different types of printing processes or materials that you use, and what are your methods in terms of how do you actually,
Well,
do
again,
that?
I won't claim to be an expert at any of them.
Hmm.
I've explored palladium, and
Yeah.
I love the warm, kind of romantic tone that palladium gives.
Hmm.
I find I've used it in a couple of projects, and it was very suitable to those projects.
Hmm.
Um, you can control the contrast pretty well, with a pretty contrasty negative,
Hmm.
but the tone of them, it's very romantic. So it's very suitable, I think, for instance, figure studies.
Hmm.
And the fact that it is a vintage, traditional, historic process is exciting for me when I photograph historic architecture, which I like to do.
Yeah.
So the idea that this historic piece of 19th century architecture is being envisioned through the use of a historic photographic technique. That's really cool. I love history, and that's exciting to me.
So you're trying to get the same look as to when the particular building itself was actually made.
Maybe, but I'm interpreting it differently. But I'm using a tool that was contemporary.
Right. And so now are there any other alternative processes that you're using right now other than
Well,
plating?
I've been during the pandemic. I've been trying to learn how to make calotypes,
Oh,
and I find that to be, I'm not so, I don't really waste as much paper and chemistry with the platinum and the palladium as I do with the calotypes. I will spend hours and get absolutely nowhere with the calotypes. It seems to me, I'm kind of self-taught. I'm not very well taught, I don't think, but there's a lot of errors that I make, but sometimes it comes out beautifully, and I wish I could understand the process well enough to know when I'm doing something right and when I'm not. It's a learning curve, and I've been playing with this again, for the last few months.
So when you do these alternative processes, unlike silver gelatin.
Oh, the other thing about the calotypes too that's different was that they're gold toned. So they
Yeah.
have a golden luster to them, which is kind of cool,
Huh. Well, now when you're doing the alternative processes, of course you're coating your own paper and things like that, and you're using a different kind of a light source, correct? Do
Right.
you have a special light source
I have
in
like
your
a box, a UV box.
and you do that in your darkroom?
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, more and more people are doing alternative processing
Yeah.
now, and they're
Well,
certainly
there's something about sort of the hand-crafted procedure
right.
of making an image that way that some people find very attractive. I happen to be one of those people. No two images are the same. It's really sort of an antidote to the digital world that we have.
Mhm.
To make something completely by hand. For me, it's very exciting.
I
Like
saw
an
it.
artist.
Yes. I saw an exhibit, a Paul Strand exhibit,
Yeah,
and Strand is like one of my all-time
right.
favorites. And
The exhibit, when was this exhibit that you saw?
several years ago at the Museum of Art in Philadelphia.
Oh, I see.
And what was
He's
interesting
one of
about
my favorites too.
yeah, oh, I've got almost all of his books, and he's one of my photographic heroes.
Yeah.
He really could do it all. Um, but what was interesting about this exhibit was, in a number of instances, they showed um, the same photograph, but done as a silver gelatin print, done as a platinum or palladium print, and then as a gravure. And you got a
Oh,
chance to see the same image in three different types of productions, and
very interesting.
it was very interesting.
That woman, that little round mirror picture, was made a number of times, and
Mhm.
sometimes it was, platinum, palladium, and the real kicker is when it's the gum over platinum. That's just beautiful.
Now, have you tried? Have you?
No, that's like I haven't gotten up to that yet.
Okay, so you've um you've also said that um you feel like you have a connection. Um, I've read you feel like you have a connection with several photographers. You've mentioned Steichen, and you've also mentioned Brett Weston and Edward
Edward
Weston,
Weston, yeah.
and so what is it about those connections? You say you feel like you have a connection with them. How so? What do you mean by that?
I find their work breathtaking and inspiring. I would never, I don't have anything in common with me. Maybe, someday if I just really, really, really work so hard, I will. But their work inspires me. It's beautiful. Um, The technique is breathtaking. The sense of vision is, again, inspiring.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, they were to have that kind of talent and as a father and a son is
yeah.
just amazing. And I well now, so um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is you know what what sort of caused you though to and we've touched about this, but what sort of caused you to gravitate towards, the larger cameras, and the older processes? And
Um,
is it and do you see it sort of as a way to get away from the stresses of life,
Absolutely.
as a working doctor?
Absolutely.
Was that
100%.
part of it?
100%. First of all, you can become so immersed in the moment of taking a photograph, of
Hmm.
waiting for the light to change, of waiting for the shadows to become exactly where you want them to be. It's very immersive, and you lose yourself, which is very relaxing to me.
Hmm. Hmm. And that was so. But you always thought of you were going to be a large format guy, and in part, it was this whole mode of slow operation.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Yeah, a lot of people that you hear that all the time. Do you think though that do you see any parallels in your photographic life and your working uh, life as a doctor?
I think, quite honestly, I think as a physician, you have to have a sense of vision. You have to be planful. I think you have to be very, very methodical and very meticulous.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think in a way you have to have a sense of craft as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the two are, there definitely are parallels between the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now you've said though that I know you've decorated your office, and we talked about this. You've decorated your office um, with your photographs, and it's and these photographs have also appeared where people actually get chemotherapy treatment and that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
it's a nice
And
space. I'm proud of that.
yeah, and you mentioned that this has helped to sort of break the ice, with patients that are fearful of what they're about, to have done to them, and it's helped them, feel maybe a little bit more calm. That's got to be sort of rewarding to you,
Yeah,
right?
there are some people that have said, this picture, I thought about it a lot while I was getting the chemotherapy, and it was peaceful for me. That made me
Yeah.
feel really good. That makes me feel really nice. There are some people also. What's fun? People will come to my office and they'll say, "Hey, doc, can you recommend a book about photography?
There you go.
Hey, doc, how can I learn more about photography? Hey, doc, can I show you some of my pictures?" I love when that happens.
Yeah, I think. I
Can I
mean,
tell you a funny story?
yeah. No, please. Yeah.
So people would bring portfolios in all the, not rarely, and some of the work is really kind of cool. Once, a number of years ago, um, an older gentleman, a guy in his 80s, and not a good 80s, came into my office, and he actually was very sharp in terms of
Hmm.
understanding the details of some of the images, asked very spot on questions about how they were made. And I asked him what he did for a living. And he said, he's a professional photographer. Wow. So I said, why don't you come in and, maybe you could, like on a Friday afternoon, it's a little bit slow, but I'd love to see your portfolio. Come in and show it to me. So, he did come in one Friday afternoon. He shuffled in. He was an old guy. kind of unkempt. But he brought a beautiful portfolio case in there, and we put it down on a table, and we opened the portfolio case, and it was all like triple X rated pornography. Not like boudoir photography. I mean, this was like, real seedy stuff.
Yeah.
And I thanked him very much for showing it. I asked him to close it. Don't let any of the women in the office see it. But that was really pretty funny.
Huh. But I think that a lot about photography is for many people, I think, that do personal work, is that it's for themselves.
Right.
They make it because they feel driven to do it, or they're compelled to do it, or they love to do it, or whatever.
There's another guy who was a patient of ours in our practice, who's a guy maybe about my age, who is a gentleman who has advanced pancreas cancer. He's dying from it, and he's an artist, and really an accomplished and an excellent one. And once he came into the office, and we talked a little bit. Had a couple of extra minutes to talk, so we were chatting about what influenced us and what our favorite art was and who our favorite photographers and artists were. And it was really fun talking to him. And then at the end of the conversation, after about 5 minutes, he said to me, aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky to be able to have that ability to create art in some small way? So here is this guy in the midst of dying,
Yeah.
and he says, aren't we lucky? His sense of himself as an artist was transformative to him, and that was very powerful to me.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so we can do this. That's a beautiful story, and we can do this work for ourselves. But I think what must be really fantastic about having that work in your office enables you to have some of these connections,
Yeah.
develop some of these interpersonal relationships with people over resulting in the work. And to me, one of the greatest things about my photographic life is that it's sort of the relationships and the journey, and then you get a picture out of it. That's like an extra bonus, and so I think that's really special that you're able to have this there, and that you can make these connections, and people are connecting with your work, and then you're developing this relationship with these people that's just beyond like a doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah.
There's some more to it.
Again, I see some rough things. I'm an oncologist,
Yeah.
So people come to my office, they're pretty sick. And for them to just sort of take a few moments and look around and ask me a question, it's very relaxing for them, I think.
Yeah.
And it's fun for me, it makes us engage in something other than those serious, terrible topics that we sometimes have to breach with, between a patient and a doctor.
So obviously, your day job, you're a doctor. You don't do photography to make a living or that sort of thing. But how would you describe the role in your life that photography has played, and also how has it changed, really? How have things changed as a result of the whole COVID situation, in terms of your work, your photography work, and then and then has there been a change also as a result of you being a working doctor, during this period?
So
it's sort of a long question, but
yeah, I find that the photography really takes me away from my work, and it gives me a personal satisfaction that is very different from that which I receive from the day-to-day caring of patients. It's very self-involved, It's for me, really, very frequently. And again, it's something that I can focus on so that I don't have to focus on the other stuff. Sometimes I'm in my office and I'll like look at one of the pictures that I'm taking that I've took, and I'm having a difficult moment with the patient over a difficult issue. And sometimes it helps me focus a little bit. And does that make sense?
Yeah, but in terms of the whole situation with you being a doctor during this very difficult time
Yeah.
of COVID, how has that sort of changed your photography? Has it affected your ability to
Yeah.
work or changed
Well,
your
I
focus
think
of
that
work?
I sort of very self-consciously thought that during this period of time, initially I thought that I was going to be less busy and I was going to have more time. Why don't I try and cultivate my photography a little bit, with my extra time?
Yeah,
As it turned out, that was wrong because I've never been busier right
yeah,
now. But I still felt that it would be fun to try and learn something completely different.
uh-huh,
And because you couldn't really travel or go out or do things outdoors, I thought it would be fun to try and take pictures of vintage sewing machines. Number one, uh, they're beautiful, they're vintage, they have
yeah,
a patina to them so that they really work nicely when we take good photographs of them. And I thought it would be fun to try and learn how to sort of take something close up with the camera. I don't do that. Normally, I take something it's, at a distance of a few feet. Some of these photographs are made, at a distance of a few inches. And then also I tried to use lighting. I never ever used, lighting other than the sunlight.
right.
I tried doing that, and then I tried to make calotypes. So it was a sort of determined project to engage in something during the pandemic. That was and I focused on it. This has been a very, very difficult time for my community of professionals in the, medical world. Uh, as an oncologist, I've seen like a lot of my patients have died from,
Yeah,
COVID-19.
it's
It,
horrible.
yeah, it's awful. And some of these people were like young, they were doing okay. But I give people, they're immunosuppressed, they're very vulnerable, my patients, and it's heartbreaking. So this is a way of me at least trying to focus on something to take me to a better place.
So yeah, that's sort of exciting though that you used, this time, to really good purpose because you what you're saying is that you made a whole set of type of pictures that you maybe wouldn't have thought about before because you were sort of, your options were limited because the size of the camera that you
Right.
use, and you're not going to be. And so now,
Well, so you know what happened? One of my kids, he actually has kind of like a hobby of collecting, restoring, repairing vintage sewing
oh,
machines.
so there you were.
Yeah, so we had, and he had them all in his apartment, and I wanted to one day, take pictures of them in his apartment. But then, I thought I would just take some of them here, and put them on a little table. I use a ladder actually,
Mhm.
and he encouraged me and excited me about the idea of doing this.
And so you've done a whole series of those,
Yeah,
and now are these silver gelatin, or are they all?
calotypes,
Oh, they're
calotypes.
oh, they're all
They're
calotypes.
all calotypes. They're all gold toned.
And how large are the calotype prints?
They're only 4x5. The negative is 4x5, but they
Okay, so
look really cool. I mean, I tried to do it with an 8x10 camera. It just didn't work out.
uh-huh. So is this something that you see that you may continue on with, or
Yeah, I'm
I
I'm
mean,
still working on them.
huh? Well, I mean, look, that's that.
I'm stumbling with the process of making the prints. Some days sort of the humidity defeats me or something else happens, but
Yeah,
it takes me a long time there's a big learning curve with making the calotypes. And then when you tone them, the toning bleaches it. So it changes the image. You have to make the image a little bit darker and then you tone it.
right.
It's a lot of finagling. And every now and then you get something good.
There's so many people I feel that I've talked to that have just been defeated. They feel defeated by this virus, and they've become they've become almost immobilized.
Right.
They're doing their work, or if they're retired, they're basically watching television, and they're not being creative during this time. And I think it's really important. And I mean, I've looked for other ways to be creative. I've done all sorts of different types of photographs than I would normally make. And so it's sort of similar to what you're doing, but there's so many people that aren't doing that. And I think that's
A lot of frustration out there in our photographic world.
it's
Yep.
it's a terrible mistake. Well, so you're, touching a little bit on that. So you're also a member and an officer of the Soho Photographic Collective,
Mhm.
and that's a pretty well-known organization in New York. Now, what's going on there? How they handled this situation, and are things starting to slowly get back to normal?
Yeah, not getting back to normal yet. I mean, we still have a limited number of people that come to the gallery.
Yeah,
Galleries open for very limited hours. Um, you know, we've had like a luncheon via a Zoom conference so that everyone could at least remain engaged as a community of photographers.
yeah,
Tuesday is rough for me to make because I have a hectic schedule in the office. I've tried to make a couple of the meetings, but I haven't really done too good at that. So those are, the obstacles. But I think many of the people in the community of at Soho Photo equally feel frustrated,
yeah,
and they've tried to make some, images of New York City during the COVID-19 pandemic.
yeah. Well, Marty, I mean, this has been a great conversation. It's been a lot of fun, and I want to thank you for taking the time to.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've really, Soho Photo, I feel like a very much a minority there because I like, the traditional film-based analog photography, and I feel that I can't really talk about that stuff with too many people there because no one's interested. So happy about, participating in monologue. I hope to do it more and more. So many people of our colleagues in monologue really share more of the photographic interest that I have than is the case with Soho Photo. Although I
Well,
love Soho Photo, so I'm hopeful to make more and more close friends and have more and more interactions and learn more and
yeah,
more, share more and more with all the folks that I'm beginning to get to know a little bit.
yeah. No, I mean, I'm very excited about Monologue, and it's growing, and it's a great group of people, and we're very unique insofar as that
I'm awed by the talent.
yeah, there's some pretty good talent,
Awesome, awesome,
and everybody is very talented, and
really talented. Yeah,
but it's completely analog,
right.
completely black and white, no digitalia, and that's a very unique thing. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm excited about having these kinds of chats, and yeah. Well, I'm
I
glad.
want to tell you something. There's the Penumbra Society here in New York City,
Mhm, mhm.
and people say that film is dead and analog photography is dead. Not last summer, but the summer before, they had an open house, and I went to it just for fun. And
Mhm.
at the open house, you couldn't find a seat to sit in. It was so busy with so many people, and they were all in their 20s.
Yeah.
There's something about moving away from digital photography,
Oh, well,
which is
man,
very, very exciting to people.
that's a that's a whole. I mean, that's a whole. We could have a half-hour conversation just about that. But I will tell you,
Isn't that thrilling, though?
it is thrilling,
Thrilling.
and I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, I've seen it, and it's almost like, you know, I'm I'm an audiophile as well, and so I'm a vinyl guy, and in both cases, with respect to vinyl LPs and film photography, a lot, kids are just going to it. They want to try it. They see the beauty of it, especially with black and white. There's something about black and white and analog and film and printing in traditional ways versus digital and inkjet printers. There's just something about it that's different and unique, and you can really look into it and into a picture and see things. The kids are really
Wonderful.
into it, and
Wonderful.
God bless them, and because they see the beauty of it, and people are in both, especially in photography, people are realizing that there's a real virtue in getting, not creating something on your computer, or we're all in front of our computers, a lot of the day, and there's, it takes more work to make a good photograph, but there's a sense of pride in it, and craft, and all
And you're
those
not
pieces.
just pressing buttons, right?
That's
You're not
right.
working on a computer. And again, that's one of the reasons why I so enjoy doing the kind of photography that we do.
Yep, absolutely. That brings us back to where we started. So,
Yep.
so again, Marty, many thanks again for
Oh, it was
taking
fun.
the
Thank you
time
very much.
today. And for those that want to see Marty's work, please come to monologuecollective.com. Marty has a very fine gallery on our website, so you can check it out there. And of course, you can contact Marty through the website as well. So thank you, everyone, for
Thank you.
watching, and I look forward to seeing everyone next time. Marty, stay well.
Thank you very much. You too. Be good.
All
Stay
right.
well.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay.